Good afternoon, everybody. It's Emma Brightwell here from ITHealth. We're just going to leave it one more minute or so because we can see that people are still joining. So if you just bear with us, we'll begin in a minute. Thank you. Okay, well, it's now a couple of minutes past 2 o'clock, so we'll make a start. I'm Emma Brightwell, the Marketing Manager here at ITHealth. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this afternoon's webinar, which is all about how you can increase network visibility to help you with your cyber assurance and compliance. And before I start, I'd just like to go through a couple of housekeeping points, just to say that the webinar is being recorded, and we will make sure that you get a link to the recording once the webinar is finished. If you have any questions as we go along, then you will notice that on the right-hand side of the screen there is a questions panel, so do feel free to pop your questions there, and we'll probably save those up and deal with them at the end. And then finally, just to say that there is a feedback questionnaire once the webinar has taken place. We would really appreciate it if you could just take a couple of minutes just to fill that out, because that really helps us for future webinars. So now I'll hand over to my colleague Chris Booth, who's the Healthcare Account Manager here at ITHealth. A lot of you will know him. Chris is leading the webinar this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. What we're going to do is take you through some background information to how the dashboard came about and how it's working for quite a number of trusts now, and then we'll go into the dashboard and how it actually works and could bring those benefits that we want to kind of draw out from today. So we'll make a start. In terms of us as an organisation, some of you may know of us from past experiences, but we just wanted to kind of just bring that into play before we got into the dashboard. We have been working in the NHS exclusively for over 25 years now, and through that time we've worked with a lot of organisations, we've developed a lot of experience, and we see ourselves as a trusted advisor in bringing solutions and advice to the NHS marketplace in and around IT security and cyber security. We have a number of different solutions. We're obviously going to focus in on the dashboard, but you'll see from the screen right now that there's quite a few things in there that you'll be familiar with in terms of different areas of product, whether it be end user protection or network defense. And obviously we're going to be focusing in on some of those as we touch and go through the dashboard, and in particular around the compliance and governance piece. But our real key asset that we believe is our team. A lot of people here who have been in the business for a long time of supporting NHS trusts, and that's where a lot of our value comes from. In terms of the dashboard, we've been developing this now over the last 18 months or so. We've been able to create a number of case studies. There are 3 which are effectively paper-based or can be PDF'd, and we've also got a couple of video case studies, one with Mike Press, I'm going to talk more about in a second, from Nottinghamshire Informatics, and also one from Rick Wakefield, who's the CTO of Northern Care Alliance, which is Salford and Pennine Acute Hospital. So they're really powerful and really do go into all the detail as to how these 2 gentlemen believe the dashboard is helping them. And Mike Press came up with this statement, and we think it's really powerful. This is about a year ago now when we first started to develop the dashboard with Mike and his team, and in terms of what they were looking to do around assurance and compliance and those kind of things. And to be able to say that he was blown away by a solution is pretty powerful stuff. So we do like that one, and we use that one quite a lot. And the reason why he said that was this was kind of a picture that he shared with us a while ago, and it'll be something that you may be familiar with. Effectively, within your organisation, there'll be a whole load of spaghetti lines connecting a whole load of different systems, whether it be hardware or software. There'll be these tools may be operational, they may be kind of investigation tools like some of these on the right over here. And the issue that was being faced at that time by Nottinghamshire HIS was one of confusion. They were not getting clear information coming out of some of these that allowed them to have a complete view of their level of assurance. And obviously WannaCry was around at the time, and it was a drive and a need out of that that kind of allowed the dashboard to be born into existence. And we took that challenge away from Mike to come back with a solution. And this was really one of the statements here. How do we get an independent view that's holistic, that's complete? And in essence, what we're saying with the dashboard is all this information that we're going to share with you in a second exists on your network. It's just not pulled into one place. And secondly, how do you know it's independent? Clearly being able to know that you've got that true view of all your cyber assurance and IT security assurance is really, really powerful, especially when we're being asked to bring together information that needs to go outside the organisation. You'll be aware that there's a new DSPT that's just been released. I'm going to come on to that in a second. And obviously care certs, which we'll cover off in the presentation, but also NIS regulations and Cyber Essentials Plus. It all means that the reporting is becoming more and more of a requirement. And really, the focus and the fixation really should be on securing you and your assets and your patients and your staff locally. And all of this information here comes out as a byproduct. So we want to help you do that and bring that laser focus in on the important things and the priorities. Excuse me. So as I say, you'll be aware that there is a new DSPT that's just been released. We've done some work around that, and we've been able to establish that 79% of the mandatory cyber-related requirements we can meet with the dashboard, and that's a number of ways, as we'll see as we go. That's quite a powerful statement to be able to make. The previous version, we were at about 58%, so that's gone up, which is great. And of course, there's also a whole load of things that we're supporting, as well as the mandatory requirements. That's really, really powerful, and we'll see how that works as we go forward through the presentation. In addition to that, the dashboard is also going to automate your care certs. This effectively is us taking those care certs as they come out, in some cases before they arrive, because we're also looking at global CVEs, and then populating a management console effectively, which then pushes out updates to you, and we trigger a new scan, as we'll come on to in a bit. So that's, again, really powerful. It takes away a lot of the pain associated with manually managing care certs. And also, at the same time, giving you full visibility of all your updates and all your patching in line with Microsoft. As they release their patching and updates, then we update the dashboard, and that then gives you a true picture of exactly where you are with all of your patching and update requirements. And in addition to that, monitoring antivirus, ATP encryption, and showing global vulnerabilities, and of course things like inactive endpoints. The really important piece here is your AV solution, whatever that may be. This is an agnostic solution, by the way. Only knows about the endpoints it knows about or the servers it knows about. If there's a machine out there with antivirus, your AV solution isn't going to know about it. So we want to draw attention to that, and I will go into these in more detail as we move forward through the presentation. So really what we're saying here is this is how we help you to support the work towards 10 steps, or Cyber Essentials Plus, or NIS, and of course the new DSPT, which is becoming more and more onerous as we go forwards. And it does it all in one dashboard, which is one of the most powerful statements we can make, and we'll see how that single-click approach bears out in a second. So a quick touch on what the dashboard service includes. It's two elements, really. It's a live dashboard, which sits on your environment, normally on a virtual server. It's agnostic in its approach. We kind of don't care what you're running in terms of software. We're going to discuss all of that. And it's also non-intrusive. The way in which we interrogate endpoints or any IP-based device is non-invasive, so it's very easy to deploy. And the other interesting thing is that as soon as you deploy the solution, it will give you a backward-looking picture on your assets, in particular things like care certs, which again is really powerful. So live dashboard, running 24/7, 365 on your network. You can access that information at any time. And in addition to that, we're also providing monthly reports. And this is a snapshot. We'll go into these in a little bit more detail later, but this is a snapshot of this report. And this is taken directly from the database, and it gives you the ability to create a report or have a report sent to you, should I say, which can then be taken straight into your management report, or if you're a wider organisation, your board report or your partner organisation reports. Again, taking away a lot of the work that needs to go into that, and we'll see how they work a little bit later on. So before we get into the dashboard and what it looks like, there's a few key things just to touch on in terms of what it's actually doing. So we're taking a full hardware inventory, we're taking a full software inventory, we're looking at the latest Windows update status direct from Microsoft. We're having a look at Active Directory and what that means in terms of compliance. We're looking at your network devices. We're looking at vulnerability risk levels from a CVE perspective, global, care certs and DSPT compliance reporting, and management reporting. And a real key factor here, particularly when we look at things like DSPT and also what Cyber Essentials Plus says, is you need to have independent reviews. Well, in essence, this is an independent review. Although we are gathering all this information together, it's a view that we're compiling on your behalf of all of your assets. So you can tick that box as well, which is great. So one last thing just to mention, Bridgewater deployed the solution about 4 or 5 months ago, and in the process of creating the business case, James, some of you may know James, made this statement which has allowed us to use, which again is a really powerful statement and hopefully kind of builds towards the picture that you're starting to form of what the dashboard is and how it will work. So here we go. So this is the dashboard. This is what we call the Windows Assurance page, and I've been asked a few times by people in presentations if there was to be a single view which an exec or a senior member of the team might want to look at, which gives you an overriding view, this would be the one. But actually, this is an operational view as well. This is bringing together a whole range of information which is pertinent to exactly where you are and your levels of assurance and compliance in one screen. Before we go into the detail of the actual screen, let me just point a few things out. At the top here, there's a search bar. You can type any IP address, any device name, any username into here, and the solution will find that for you, assuming it's been reported, of course. And then below that, there's a series of white labels here. This is the kind of under the bonnet detail where you can go and look at any asset, generate other reports, look at what's going on with software, etc., etc., etc. Look at what's been scanned. We sometimes find in projects that we don't have details for a particular subnet. It would still find those devices, but it wouldn't be able to interrogate them as an example. So again, really powerful, and I'll come on to that a little bit later. And then directly below that are a series of tabs. Now, please bear in mind, we're talking one click. As we move between each screen, it's one click from one thing to the next. And again, you'll start to get a bit of a feel as to what's going to go on in terms of information we're going to surface out as we go through. So let's look at what's going on here. A couple of general things to mention to you first. One, anything in red, needs you to have a look at that. Now, clearly, we want to be able to help you prioritise what needs to be done in terms of remediation. So red labels are important. They'll always have a number against them. You'll also see these teal-coloured labels here. Numbers again, so that's information, just general information that you might want to be aware of. And then finally, things in grey will have a 0 against. There's nothing to be done there. That's been remediated, or there's no activity to be required. So we're now going to work across the screen, left to right, top to bottom, and explain some of these features. So the first thing we look at is antivirus. Again, agnostic. We have dashboards deployed at the moment running against Sophos, against Defender, against McAfee. So completely agnostic, but we're going to bring back straight away any workstations without antivirus. As I said earlier, your AV solution will not be able to locate those because you won't know about them. And we're also running with an agent-based solution here, again, so we can check on those agents to make sure they're running. And again, AV disabled, AV expired. Really important, this piece of information here. And then below that, ATP. I'll be able to show this later in one of the reports, but in the live dashboard, we break all the components out from ATP. So MMAs, KBs, etc., etc. If any one of those is broken or is not working, it will say that ATP is disabled. But obviously, we need to be able to address the underlying requirements. So there's ATP. And then drive encryption. Again, agnostic. We're calling out a few here in terms of BitLocker. There's certainly a movement towards that now. And not just for laptops, but the wider estate. And of course, McAfee, could be Safeguard, could be others. But again, what's going on with your drive encryption, disabled, not installed, etc. And then directly below that, the first view of what's going on with our Windows update in terms of desktops, and then also in terms of servers. And then information in the center here that relates to these updates here. So what's going on with update details? Where are we? Again, informational. But then more importantly, where do we have machines we don't have automatic update services running? They're not going to get updated. They need to be running, so we need to tell you about those things. Where do we have machines that have got less than a certain amount of drive space? Or a percentage, because if we're going to push an update out, that isn't going to take effect. And then clearly, information about machines that have not been rebooted, because we don't know about those. If they're not being in reboots, then it's likely that any updates will not have taken effect, which again will affect these two pie charts down here. On the right-hand side, an overview of our OS and service packs, high level, and then Active Directory compliance information. Again, the reason why this is here is to bring out whether you've got users who may be using other people's computers, as an example. So users not seen, computers not seen. Fail logons, Cyber Essentials Plus related. No password change, Cyber Essentials Plus related again. That's been fed now into DSPT. And then some more information here about general things in terms of AD. And we are interrogating AD natively here. And then additional to that, admin logons and domain admins. In this section, we've also now added open shares. So we've got open shares in network. That's something that's called out of Cyber Essentials Plus and also the DINAC reports. And we're also just looking at how we bring out information related to weak passwords, which again is in most of those requirements. And then the final piece down here is care certs, which I'm going to go on to in more detail. So you can probably already see that this one screen here gives you a lot of information. And it's the type of thing that is up on boards in up on the smart boards now in many trusts, so people know exactly what's going on and draws that laser focus. But let me go back over here to ATP, and I want to show you that this is not just about read-only, this is about a dynamic solution. So we were saying there were 8 machines that were disabled. These are those 8 machines. I've gone straight to them. Here's my list for remediation. Now, if I wish to, from here, I can create a package, deploy it to the server, and I can deploy from here, rescan, and hopefully see those 8 machines disappear. That will then will reduce that to a 0. Obviously, those machines need to be online at that time to be able to do that, but that's how dynamic the solution is and how quickly we can get to a remediation list. And we can also then drill into one of those machines, and I'm going to come back to this later when we come on to actually how we can use the tools to investigate problems that may be on the network as well. So I'll come back to that a little bit later on. So and that brings us back up to the main screen. So let's start and take a look at some of these tabs at the top here. And the first thing I want to go to is care certs. Now, I don't know where you are with your care certs today. I don't know how you manage them. Most organisations we speak to, it's still a manual process. Some are able to create work packages and then have them worked on by the service desk. But we've automated the entire process. In the background, our management console is effectively, we're updating that on a weekly basis. That is usually on a Friday as care certs come out. Low risk, although that label's about to be removed, and medium risk. But of course, there are times when we get highs and criticals come out, and I'll touch on those in a second. So day to day, normal business as usual, care certs come out. We take the information directly from NHS IT. We update our management console, and then we update your dashboard directly from here at base. And that then triggers a rescan. That will then scan all your assets, and it will immediately tell you exactly what is going on. One of the interesting things is when the dashboard goes in, we immediately get a backward look, so a historical view or a backward-facing view of what the care cert position is, which is really, really powerful. It's not just going to start today, it's going to go backwards in time. So top left here, we have care cert trending over time of those that are outstanding and those that are resolved, and then month by month in terms of totals, outstanding and resolved. And then below that, the entire list of care certs, and we'll see how we work with this in a second. But effectively, care cert number, the green and red radio buttons immediately indicate whether it's been resolved or whether it's outstanding, as we see here. We'll also indicate whether it is resolvable, because some of them aren't, and therefore if you've got something like a medical device, you may not be able to do an update on that. That's likely it's not resolvable. We're about to implement effectively a self-certification piece in here for you to be able to manually update those, change it to an amber radio button, and then add a note to say that you've done that. And again, bear in mind, we need to be reporting on these via DSPT now. When the care cert was issued, what the risk level is, how many have been found on that initial scan, and how many are outstanding, and how they've been superseded. This is all dynamic information. What I mean by that is, if we look at the next screen, which is the kind of working environment, everything on the left-hand side is outstanding, everything on the right-hand side is already resolved. If I'd been away on holiday and my machine hadn't been patched, but let's say this Mozilla release at the top here, and I came back and connected to the network, immediately there's going to be one that's going to reappear up here. It'll flip from this side to this side. But again, similar information to what was on the previous screen, all the pertinent information about the actual issue, the care cert, clearly outstanding dates, etc., etc. In addition to that, we can then also drill into this particular care cert to show what the affected platforms are, what the description is, what the remediation process is, and again, you could then click into that, pull out the list of, in this case, 78, create the package, deploy the package, rescan, and see those disappear and move on to this side as a result. So that's how dynamic, that's how effective it is. That's how you can then bring up that historical list over time. And then you can also drill in and you can filter on various things to case, show me all the ones for November or a particular date on both outstanding. So again, very, very powerful. Takes a lot of the legwork away from kind of not knowing what you don't know effectively, because that's what this is about. It's about visibility and then being able to act upon it and act upon it with priority. So that's care certs. In addition to care certs, in the dashboard, we also have a global vulnerability view as well. Now, this can happen in a number of ways. It can either be a single scan of a gold image, it could be a quarterly scan of a gold image, it could be a monthly scan of a gold image, or it could be a scan of every asset. Bear in mind, when we talk about vulnerabilities, we're not talking about software that's out of date. We could be talking about a switch, which is misconfigured, as an example. And within this scan, that would bring those out. So some of you may be familiar with a Nessus type scan. This effectively is a Nessus Lite scan. If you're already using Nessus, we can bring that view into here. Again, bring it all into that single place. So that's CVEs and global vulnerabilities sitting right alongside care certs. Okay, so again, we have to keep bearing in mind that these are all sitting side by side in this single click approach. So now I want to take a look at what's going on with our Windows update trends. And again, we're bringing this out in two ways. One, over time. So here's my desktops and here's my servers. And then the actual detail of what's going on with these individual devices. So if we take a look at servers over here, we've got some red ones and some green ones. Anything that's in red is over 90 days, which is a big issue. So we need to be able to get to those very quickly, understand what the remediation requirement is, and then work out how they can be remediated. Now, we appreciate that from a healthcare perspective, a lot of these are clinical servers and the reboot process, but we have found as the dashboard has been taken on, the culture begins to change because there's visibility of what's going on. So a good example would be clinical server, clinical director says, or department head says, you can't reboot that machine, can't apply patches, that's a vulnerable machine. It can very quickly be put onto the risk register because you've got complete visibility to share with anybody that you need to share it with at that point. And of course, in those reports, we're going to come on to later. I don't have any ambers, but anything that's amber would be between 30 and 90 days, and anything that's in green is within 30 days. So clearly, again, laser focus into the areas. And these are taken and comparing outputs directly from Microsoft on a week-by-week basis. And these are based on roll-ups, complete security roll-ups. So again, worktop, workstations, laptops, etc., and servers. Very, very powerful, very quickly into that information to be able to manage that. Now, although this says Sophos Central, and I appreciate some of you on the call will probably be using Sophos Central or Sophos on-premise, the logic within here applies to whichever console you're using, provided we can get access to that console. So effectively, again, within DSPT, and this section here actually is from the previous DSPT, there's some additional components now. You need to be able to name the antivirus product and the versions. You need to be able to provide numbers of alerts in the last 3 months, and you also need to be able to provide details of incidents related to exploits or any assertions within the CareCert program. So what we've done is brought that information together in one place. Now, if you were to look in your console, you would find that this information wouldn't all be in one place. You'd be trying to scratch around trying to find it. So in terms of what we've done, up here are our detections and what's been cleaned over time, the detail below that. And then up here, we're bringing out all the clients that are up to date in your AV and out of date, what versions and what modules you're running and which of those are up to date and out of date. And this information about computers not seen, because of course if they've not been seen in the network, they may not have been updated, therefore they could be at risk. In addition to that, information around Sophos Central details, or for that read, McAfee or Defender. Again, very powerful information to one place, allowing you to carry out your DSPT reporting very easily and very quickly. And then turning to Active Directory. Active Directory, an operational tool, probably used in every NHS organisation, but actually getting information quickly in terms of compliance and what's been going on with users is maybe not so easy. So again, interrogating it directly, bringing out information about users not seen, computers not seen, failed logons, no password changes, Active Directory users created over certain time periods and new computers found, admin logons, domain admins. And then over here, compliance information around those accounts. So where do we have information missing, where we've got no email address? And again, in this section is where we've added open shares, and we'll be adding weak passwords. We've also been asked about other things around Active Directory, about breaking out details of who'd made changes. Again, we've got a very, very long and effective roadmap where there'll be many, many things, and most of those things are driven by people like yourselves who are coming to us with new ideas about what the dashboard could cover. So we're now going to take a look at what goes on around discovery for computers, and for this also read what happens to servers. We're not going to look at the server tab today, but effectively the same information or similar. What's going on with domains? We can identify domain and non-domain machines. We're then going to take a really deep dive look at all the information that's pertinent to those particular computers. We then repeat the AV status, we repeat the antivirus status. We can then look at the chassis types, things that have not been scanned since the last scan, IP locations, subnets, etc., and then Windows update details. And then over on the right-hand side, a much more detailed breakdown, Windows OS service pack, operating system detail, build versions for Windows 10 or Server 16 or etc. And then OS is out of date. We're also about to add OSs that are end of life or going end of life. Again, this is really powerful if you are responsible for the desktop environment, and this may be the only screen you want to look at because that's what's pertinent to you, giving you information about what's going on with your environment. And then we can take a look at what goes on with software. Now, very early in the presentation, I talked about software asset management and hardware asset management. This hasn't been designed as a software asset management tool, but in order for us to help you understand any issues around patching, etc., we need to know what software exists on the estate. So we take a full inventory. Now, interestingly, we've had a few customers who've said they are going to consider not renewing their software asset management going forward because this provides the tools they need to do that. But that's a kind of decision that needs to be made once you see the dashboard. But you'll see up the top left here, we start to bring out Apple Mac and Linux, SQL versions, and then all software publishers and all versions listed here. This unauthorized software piece was added because Cyber Essentials Plus originally asks you to create and list out all your unauthorized software and all unrated software now as well. So the ability to do that, tag them, bring them out, understand what that looks like, and then any software changes are logged down here as well. A powerful software asset tool if you wanted to use it for that in a sense as a byproduct. And equally, hardware assets. In order to highlight those vulnerabilities and do all the checking, we need to identify every hardware asset manufacturer. This is every IP addressable device that exists. And we have lots of stories about things that we found on the network. Things like power supplies with default passwords. We also found a hospital generator network connected with a default password. So that's how deep we can go with this. But we're kind of looking at this to show you how we can start to use this tool, not only for hardware asset management, but also for investigation purposes, using the tool kind of by lifting the bonnet. So you'll see here we've got a whole list of asset types. This is editable, so some people have added medical devices in here. And I want to take a look at the switch setup here. So I'll go into here. No doubt you'll have a lot more than 4 on your network. And I want to look at a particular switch, and I can then see that switch. This one happens to be a Cisco switch, and I can see all the interfaces here, what's up, what's down. And I'm interested in one particular interface here, and it happens to be a PC. And here's the PC. Now, we're showing you this because we want you to understand how much detail we can actually acquire from these devices. I also wanted to bring out here all the tools over on the left-hand side. A lot of our technicians will tell us that one of the best used tools over here is Wake on LAN, but effectively you can see all these tools that can be used. Let's just say we had a PC that was causing us some problems. We couldn't quite work out what it was. You could go in, you could look at the PC, you could look at the owners, you could look at what's happened when it was last on the network, etc., the warranty information. You can then work through the tabs at the top up here, and you'll get a good view of all of the updates that have, from an historical perspective, that have been applied. You look at all the software and versions that are on that machine. You can look at the uptime of that machine in terms of reboot strategy, and you can also see all the users. One thing I find interesting here is we often see administrator, and what I'm interested in is what credentials is that administrator using to log on to a PC for support purposes. Are they the same ones they're using to log on to the servers, etc. We can also add documents to this as well, and the one that we're about to add is vulnerabilities. So you've seen right from the outset that we're doing a top-down view of all of your assets and all the vulnerabilities. We're going to add a tab in here which will show you all the vulnerabilities that are affecting this particular device, which will give you the ability to go into that one and see it from there. So that's how deep we can go with interrogating those devices, and that brings us back up to the high-level dashboard in terms of that wider assurance piece. So that's the dashboard. As I say, it sits on your network. It's non-invasive. It's agentless. There are agents if we've got machines that are out of the network, and that's running 24/7, 365, and you can access that in any way you want. We can build out new reports for you. You can build them yourselves. Anything that's particular. We've had some very interesting anecdotal ones around things like printers. We see all our printers on our estate, and we can see trends of what they've been used for in terms of paper and toner, etc. That's a bit of a left field one, but you get the idea of what this will do and how powerful it is in all that context. I want to move on now and look at the monthly reports. This is kind of the second part of the solution in terms of providing that report, and we provide these because we recognise that there is a need for reporting internally, and that reporting needs to be usually pushed up to board level in terms of your wider assurance level. In addition, it's fair to say that I've been to some meetings recently whereby there have been a number of people who come to meetings and are asked to create reports, and those reports are based on their assessment of their own individual environments, some from server, some from desktop, etc., etc. And it's their version of the truth, effectively. So the dashboard, if that was the case, you could sit around the table with those 11, 12 people, and you could all see the same information, or you can use this report. And we now have some CTOs and high-level members of the IT team who just look at the reports. They don't look at the dashboard anymore. They take the reports on a monthly basis, and they use this as part of their board reporting. So let's have a quick look at what's within here. So Windows estate, what have you got in the estate, particularly in terms of things that might be going end of life. You spot some XP on there as an example. You need to know about those and how that's going to affect you going forwards. What's going on with patching? Where are we with the latest patches? And obviously getting those in a timely manner is very, very important nowadays. Windows patching trends over time. So it's easy to see. It's easy to see what's going on with your desktops and servers and how they've been affected. And maybe if you see a blip, what's caused that? You ask a few questions or look at the dashboard directly. And then Windows security. Here's the ATP enablement I mentioned earlier. It's in the live dashboard. So KBs, ATP, MMAs, etc. All the various components. Encryption status, AV detections, and then recent viruses, again, all in a single report. And then care certs. So you will always see the last month's set of care certs, where you are at that particular point in time, and then trended over time, and then obviously that monthly status in terms of where you are. And again, I'll come back to this point. It's a really important point. When the dashboard goes in, it will give you an historical view backwards. It's not just going to start from the day that the dashboard starts its scanning process. And then the vulnerability report, and this report will be based, and the content of this will be based on what we're actually doing for you, whether it's a single gold image, or whether it's a number of gold images, or whether it's a much wider level of assets across the network. And then we have our network and Active Directory report, so domains, devices, chassis, etc., machines that are out of warranty, that kind of thing. And then network device overview, active computers, inactive computers over 60 days, over 90 days, and then desktop reboots, server reboots, and then Active Directory in terms of users, inactive accounts, and then also in terms of failed logons and password changes. Again, really easy to see what's going on in terms of a graph. And as you kind of come towards kind of winding up on this part anyway, there's a range of people that are currently using the dashboard. That actually represents over 50 individual organisations, because you probably recognise some of these have got multiple organisations. There's 8 there, there's over 20 in the embedded environment. That's Merseyside, HBL, there's quite a few, and then there's also some specific ones which are single organisations. But you'll see it's covering all of the areas, whether it's an ambulance trust or a foundation trust or an acute or partnerships, mental health, community, CCGs, etc., etc. So good ones there. Some good cases, as I mentioned earlier. In terms of commercials, this is how we build it out. It's based on IP asset limits. It's a managed solution. It tends to cover proactive things and reactive things. Most people are buying for 3 or 5 years now, and obviously we're on most of the main frameworks, which helps out a lot to the procurement. And just to mention, as we kind of close before we take any questions, we are running another kind of face-to-face event on the 8th of October at the National Space Centre, which is very timely given what was going on yesterday with the first moon landing, so that's good timing. I expect lots of space things around that theme.
Okay, so thank you, Chris. We have had a couple of questions come in, so if I just run through those really quickly. The first one is from Mike there. Does the dashboard sit on our environment?
Yes, it sits directly on your environment. Most of the deployments are on a virtual server. As I said, it also is non-invasive in the way that it scans and is agentless in the main.
Okay. And then another question is, the Windows updates, what's the reference data for MS and other software that allows us to ensure that we show every update and not just roll them up? Okay,
so in the same way that Microsoft have their Patch Tuesday, we kind of follow the same format. So we're taking information directly from the Microsoft security updates. And obviously once we've done that, we then contrast and compare what we found on your environment with that as a reference point.
Okay, and then finally, we've just got someone that missed the intro, so they're not actually sure what it's called, and how much does it cost? Well, we covered how much it costs just there at the end, so I'm assuming that they called that bit.
Yeah, so we call it the Vulnerability and Assurance Dashboard. We being ITHealth, so we precursor with that. The cost is based on the number of IP addressable assets. In the main, that's all IP address facets, but it can be carved up into, if you wanted to, some people are doing things like removing VoIP phones as an example.
Okay, thank you. That looks about it for questions. If you do have any questions that you'd like to ask following the webinar and you don't like to ask them at this specific point, then please do get in touch and we'll happily answer those for you. As I mentioned at the start of the webinar, you will be served a short survey once we close this webinar today. So if you could take a moment or so to complete that survey for us, it would be very much appreciated. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.